I gave brain to a dog. First of all, I'm really sorry if this isn't normally accepted, or if I'm breaking any rules here, but I want to confess this to somebody, and I can't really do it with people I know. Lately I've been dog sitting for a colleague who travels a lot with her, and they can't always take their two Rottweilers, M plus F, with them, so they stay at my place for a couple days. Now, I can imagine some of you picture Rottweilers to be a scary, aggressive breed, but believe me, these two are really sweet once you get accustomed to them. They also really are beautiful too. They're trained, and overall they're very obedient too. I very rarely get to take care of both dogs at once because they're very active and demanding in attention's care, but mostly because, according to their owner, the female is still too young to breed. Yet the male occasionally already tried to hump her a few times, so they prefer to keep them separate when they're not supervising them, so to say. Now fast forward to my story. Yesterday, owners arrive at my place at around 9 a.m. as planned, and was looking forward to have 3 days together with Max, the male Rottweiler. To add a bit of detail, the owners warned me that Max tried to hump their armchair and a big animal plushie in their bedroom, and that they said it was kinda normal as he reached dog puberty, but couldn't mate yet. I just laughed it off and thought, yeah, whatever, but damn, I had no idea this would have led to, well, yeah. Couple hours later, just as we come back from a jogging walk by, he immediately ran to my living room and tried to mount the couch. I remembered what the owners told me and it made me giggle again. I tried calling him couple times but nope, he didn't want a reason. I tried to distract him with a dried bone thingy but nah, still no luck. I managed to move him a little bit but he shoved me aside a bit, like, hey, can't you see I'm busy here? And then he started sniffing at me, my jogging pants.
My parents decided to have a sixth kid, knowing they couldn't afford it, and they expected us to give up our college fund to provide for them. I am my parents' second child. I have 3 brothers and a sister. We grew up poor, and our parents were often dependent on financial help from relatives and friends for raising us. This is because even though my dad has a mediocre job and my mom doesn't work, they just kept on popping out one kid after another. My parents are very religious and believe that children are a gift from God. Personally, I think that's total BS. My parents' reproductive choices wouldn't bother me if it hadn't caused mine and my siblings' lives to turn to poop. While growing up, we never had new clothes or toys. We had to accept handouts from family members who were better off. We never went out or did anything fun. To top it off, we were well aware that the rest of the family looked down on us for constantly asking for handouts. Now, my older brother and I have managed to get into good colleges and are looking forward to a future that will be better than our parents' lives. He and I were staying at our parents' place for a while due to the virus lockdown. One morning, my parents called all 5 of us into the living room. Mom said she had great news. The smile that was forming on my face died a quick death when she said, "We're pregnant." I lost my temper. I asked them how they could be so stupid and irresponsible. Do they not have enough financial troubles already that they have to bring in another mouth to feed? My older brother tried to calm me down, but I was livid. After a lifetime of scarcity because of my parents' stupidity, they still hadn't learned their lesson. I asked them how they planned to provide for the kid. My dad told me I would have to give up the money our great uncle had left me. He had left all 5 of us some money which only we could access when we turned 18. I said, hell no, that money would help pay for my college expenses. He called me selfish for not being there for my family. I told them if they couldn't provide for the kid, they should get in baby garbage. My mom started crying and called me a heartless monster. Dad told me he was disgusted with me. I told them there was no way I would pay for their stupidity, and the only thing I would be willing to pay for is a termination. What I was really worried about was my siblings' lives getting even worse. My older brother and I have escaped our parents' clutches, but the others, especially my younger sister, will be expected to help take care of this baby. No teenager deserves to have their adolescence ruined by diapers and a screaming baby. I know what it's like, as I had to endure that. I was expected to be an unpaid nanny to my younger brothers and sisters. My older brother could go out with his friends and have fun, but I had to stay home, help give baths, and feed the toddlers. I decided to involve some family members so they could talk some sense into my parents. I called my mom's maternal cousin. She's one of my favorite people. When I told her that mom and dad were having another kid, she said, "What, again?" I told her everything and how they expected me to hand over my inheritance. She said she would speak to my parents and told me not to sign over anything. I promised her I wouldn't. I also called 2 of my first cousins, one of whom is an accountant, so she could explain to my parents how much of a financial liability this baby is going to be and try to convince them to either ab-RT or give it up for adoption. I moved out of my parents' home a few days ago. I was only going to stay there until the lockdown was relaxed, but I just couldn't bear to listen to my mom's nagging about how this baby is a blessing and that I want to unalive it. I've moved into a friend's basement for minimal rent. My mom's cousin paid them a visit about a week ago and tried to tell them they weren't doing this child any favors by bringing it into a life of poverty. My mom was very rude to my aunt and told her that a woman who chose to remain barren will never understand a mother's love. My dad told her to get out. Aunt told me there was nothing she could do, but she did try. I didn't blame her. The cousin tried to explain the economic impact this kid would have, and my mom cried about how everyone was trying to take away her baby. The intervention didn't do poop. So now I've decided to cut contact with my parents. I just can't watch my family slide further and further into a hellhole. I'll be maintaining contact with my sister just to make sure my parents can't brainwash her. My older brother will stay in touch with all of them, which is a good thing as he can act as a link between me and the other siblings if my parents ever forbid them from talking to me. Otherwise, I'm done with these people. Update: yesterday afternoon, I got a call from my older brother. He told me that my mom had miscarried. This is hardly surprising as she's in her 40s. I felt a huge wave of relief wash over me. My siblings' lives would not be worsened by my parents' insistence on adding another mouth to feed on an already tight budget. My sister would not be asked to give up her inheritance so they could have money for their new baby. My brother told me my mom had been crying, and while I did feel bad for her, I was still glad to hear about the miscarriage. I feel like we all dodged a huge bullet. Bro asked me to move back in for a while to help comfort my mom. I told him I wasn't going to move in because my college would reopen in a few days, and I was done with all the family drama. However, I agreed to visit my mom, if only out of courtesy. In the evening, I went over to my parents' place. I bought chocolate chip muffins for my mom, which I know she likes. My sister greeted me at the door and told me mom had been in bed all day. After greeting my dad, I went into their bedroom. Mom was sitting up on the bed. I told her I was sorry about what happened and placed the muffins on the bedside table. She looked at me angrily, then threw the muffins at me. She screamed at me that she had lost her baby because of me. She said I had caused her stress, and it's what caused her to miscarry. She said I was probably glad her baby was dead. She called me a witch and said I had wished this upon her. She was screaming so loudly all my siblings and my dad came rushing to the bedroom. She yelled at me to get out. I did. I hugged my older brother and sister. Before I left, my dad told me my mom was right, that my cruelty caused her to miscarry. I told him that was a grossly unfair accusation and reminded him that at mom's age, it was quite common to miscarry. Then I walked out. I'm so done with my parents and their stupidity. I can only hope they won't try for another kid. My entitled sister-in-law tried to steal our baby's name to spite us. Now, she regrets it and demands that we pay her compensation. My wife and I spent 4 years trying to get pregnant before the wrong side of 35. We are currently 33 respectively now and are blessed with a wonderful infant son. My wife has a younger half-sister that she has been LC with for some time. The woman is entitled and toxic, and also her mother's golden child. We've refused to let her or my mother-in-law in the house since they both blatantly tried to make off with my wife's jewelry box a couple of years ago. The box contained valuable jewelry inherited from my wife's grandmother. Said jewelry is now in a safety deposit box, as per my suggestion. My wife and I had nearly given up trying to conceive when it suddenly happened, and we were ecstatic. After discovering we were having a boy, we started looking into names. I suggested the name of my Scottish grandfather, and my wife loved it, so that's the name we settled on. But we made the mistake of posting about it on social media. Well, it's no surprise to the stereotype in this mess. My sister-in-law was pregnant, too, and was months further along than my wife and also having a boy. She decided to claim my grandfather's name for her own son. And not just the first name, but the middle name, too. We called her, pissed over what she was doing, and she smugly told us there was nothing we can do about it. She was sorta right. There was nothing we could do about it legally, as it's still not a crime to steal planned baby names. We realized that drama was exactly what my sister-in-law wanted. She thought that by taking the name for herself, we'd not be able to use it. I laughed and told her that while what she did was dirty and underhanded, we would keep our chosen name, and she could just deal with it whether she decides to go through with copying us or not. Well, my sister-in-law's baby daddy called me and said I was an unreasonable PP for still wanting to use the name after sister-in-law claimed it. I said she claimed nothing, and since we couldn't own the name, then neither could they. Before he ended the call, he threatened me by saying I'd be sorry if we didn't change the name. Then he hung up before I could respond. Months later, sister-in-law had a healthy baby boy and named him my grandfather's name. We did not show up for the birth, both because of the pandemic and because we simply didn't care to be there. Sister-in-law called us wanting congratulations, but we told her we simply didn't care, and that if she was still insisting we change our baby's name, then she'd be in for some big disappointment because we were not. Sister-in-law demanded I put my wife on the phone, but it was already on speaker, and my wife spoke up and said she agreed with me entirely. We weren't changing the name. Sister-in-law hung up on us but soon started sending emails with text walls of names, even suggesting similar ones. I responded that the name was from my grandfather, and that's why we were not changing it. She shut up, and we didn't hear from her again till after our own son was born. 2 months later, we were blessed with our son. He came out perfect, and we named him as we'd intended. Well, no surprise, my sister-in-law called us a few days after the birth to scream in our ears that we copied her son's name. I pointed out she was the real copycat since she had no familial ties to the name, and we did, and anyone who looks at our family trees could see that. Then my wife spoke and said after the attempted theft of her grandmother's jewelry, she no longer considered sister-in-law her sister, and it would have nothing to do with her nephew either. For months, we were bombarded with messages and emails from my wife's side of the family. Half were on our side after finding out the whole story, the other half were not, and sister-in-law's baby daddy, true to his word, showed up at my door to make me sorry. I'm not sure what his plan was, but I pretty much towered over him. I'm 6 feet 1 inch and well built from regular exercise and 3 weekly gym trips. He, on the other hand, was very skinny and about 5 feet 6 inches with a baby face that was badly hidden by a slim beard. I told him my house had cameras and to get off my property and never come back. He just yelled a few obscenities at me and drove off in his beat-up old car. Sister-in-law and mother-in-law called us from a different number to yell at me for making sister-in-law's baby daddy feel emasculated. I didn't even threaten the man, just told him to leave and not come back. And if he didn't want to feel emasculated, he shouldn't have come knocking. Then they tried to bring up the issue of the baby's name again and demanded we change our son's name to he's so young. So there's still plenty of time to do it. We held our ground and told them that they were bonkers to think they were still in the right after they copied our choice of name just to try and get one over on us. I said sister-in-law didn't even name her son out of love but out of spite, just to try and stick it to my wife for no good reason. Then my wife called them both out on the way she was treated growing up, how entitled sister-in-law and mother-in-law have always been, and how she was glad to leave them far behind, and she wants nothing from them, and they won't have anything from us. That left sister-in-law sobbing, and mother-in-law called me a royal bastard before hanging up the phone. That was NC again for a little while till sister-in-law called us again sometime later to bitterly tell us we'd won. She and her baby daddy got into a huge fight, and he left. He was so sore that sister-in-law didn't even let him give his son a middle name from his family. And he said he was sick of the bullshit and wanted his son named after him and not some guy he wasn't even related to. Sister-in-law finally caved, and they got the boy's birth certificate reissued with a completely new name, which cost sister-in-law around $500, or so she claims. Sister-in-law then demanded we at least compensate her for the name change, plus another $100 for the emotional damage, as now she's going to have to get used to calling her son by a different name. We laughed and said this would have never happened if she hadn't stolen our baby's name, to begin with, and we didn't know her anything. Since then, we've been in NC with sister-in-law and mother-in-law, but my father-in-law, who's a very nice man and divorced from mother-in-law for obvious reasons, would come by often and love his grandson. From what he and other relatives told us, the situation between sister-in-law and her baby daddy was pretty tumultuous. But we don't care, not our monkeys, not our circus. What screams I have a crush on you? 1. Typically only others can see it, but when they look at you every chance they get when you aren't looking, lol. 2. When the group laughs, they look at you to see if you are laughing too. 3. Longing looks and nervous conversations. 4. Giving them a drawing you did of them. 5. They're happier to see you specifically, even though they can barely hold a conversation with you. Long pauses in between conversations, while someone looks at the ground. That's key. 6. Putting their palm up against yours to compare hand sizes. 7. I once spotted my crush with her back to me at the other end of a lobby, so I rushed over and kinda kicked her leg, no idea why, but accidentally kinda kicked her leg for real. I wasn't even that young, really. 8. When I'm sat next to someone and our legs touch and they don't move their leg away, I start thinking about the rest of my life with that person. I'm so lonely. 9. Always finding an excuse to be near said crush. Once I ate lunch 2 times because my work crush invited me out to the food trucks. I was so full and low-key disgusted with how much I ate that day, lol. 10. Benign insults and picking on each other, but never admitting a compliment for fear it would be misconstrued as creepy or give away the crush.
What would be a funny thing to say to a surgeon before anesthesia kicks in 5 seconds later? The last time I tried to say something funny right before surgery, they were about to put me out and I said, "Go easy on me, doc, it's my first time." I gave a little chuckle, and so did the doctor. He then picked up a scalpel and said, "Don't worry, it's my first time too," and then I promptly blacked out. Right before I went under to have surgery on my septum, I was about to start counting backwards, before they put the mask on. Does anyone need anything while I'm out? The last thing I remember was an room full of people hysterically laughing. I was being wheeled into emergency abdominal surgery once and my girlfriend was with me. We're rolling down the hall, and they have the mask out to put me under, and I pause and say to her, "Don't let them touch my dick." The nurse smirked a little, and they put the mask on me. In somewhat of a panicked fashion, I pulled the mask off, stared up at my girlfriend, and with full weight and seriousness told her they can look at it. But no touching. I heard the doctor laughing as the gas kicked in. They had a thing checking my heart, and it fell off and it flatlined. I told them, "God damn it, you killed me. If I don't make it through this, tell my wife I want her to be buried alive with me." I once had to have my right hand operated on for a serious injury. Dr. Grace, will be able to play guitar after this? Oh sure you will. Funny, I never could before. The operating room feels silent. When I got my wisdom teeth removed. Doctor, alright, so you feeling that sedative yet? Me, yeah, a little bit. I bet I can stay awake though. How long can people usually fight it? Doctor, not long. Good night. Me, blackout. I remember laughing when I woke up because that was the last thing I remember.